just as we move into the next section, one thing we haven't touched on here, which I'm conscious of as well, is you played for England. You played from 16s to 21s. Probably 15, 20 times. So just to throw that in the mix as well. Representing your country. I'm kind of like I'm going to go in some coaching here because I think this could be the most interesting section. I'm really intrigued. I'm really, some of the people listening to these calls and that hopefully we're really interested in this. That I'm going to try and get like a bit of a goalkeeper's view on coaching, what they think coaching's like, what they think the benefits of it, and stuff like that. So, just to give it a bit of context, you started your coaching badges. You've done your both B licenses, goalkeeping B and outfield B. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
What's like? If you look back over the last 15 years, you've probably had, I don't know, best part of 10 goalkeeping coaches. Tell us a bit about some of the differences with the coaches or the type of coaching that you've been given, and just give us an insight into what you think.
Wow. Yeah, good question. I've had so many goalkeeper coaches that I've forgotten probably half of them. As I say, I've got that nasty habit of getting rid of managers, but yeah, I've been lucky as well. I've had some excellent mentors in my career, and really early on, I kind of was fortunate that Eric Steele, who has had a wonderful kind of coaching career, he was my first goalkeeper coach at Derby County.
Yeah.
Or he was the senior goalkeeping coach, and he really sort of took me under his wing and showed me the ropes, as it were. Also, Eddie Niedzwiecki, special shout for Eddie, because actually before I did sign for Derby at 15, 16, Eddie Niedzwiecki was the first team goalkeeper coach at Chelsea at the time. Now, long story short, his son played in the same Sunday League team as me, so he used to come and watch his son, and ended up inviting me down to come and train with him and his goalkeepers at Chelsea on a Tuesday night, his young goalkeepers. And he was the one who actually arranged the trial for me up at Derby County, through his contact with Eric Steele. So Eddie and Eric, two, I would consider really, really top coaches. And I was probably spoiled as a young goalkeeper to have had those two before the age of 20 years old, so having worked with both of those guys. And then from 20 onwards, a few different coaches, massively different styles, different rates of how they wanted to work, how hard they wanted to work. And then had another long relationship then in terms of my goalkeeping and player-coach relationship with Billy Mercer, because I had him at Sheffield Wednesday. Then he went with Brian Laws across to Burnley, and then Burnley signed me. So I ended up having, 3 years with him near enough at Sheffield Wednesday, and then the same almost again at Burnley. So, yeah, I mean, I had a wonderful relationship with Bill as well. So as I say, again, really, I've been quite lucky and quite blessed with that. But the differences are stark. They're like, the spectrum's massive when I think about some of the things I was doing with certain coaches and some of the things I'm doing now. And you almost wouldn't be able to, I mean, if you stood back and watched, it would probably look like two different sports almost. That's how different some of the things are that we would do. When I think about how we would, certain coaches would just have us up and down and just battering us and smashing us. And there'll be plenty of goalkeepers that will absolutely know about what it's like to just get up to do 10 dives that way and get up and do 10 dives that way and have no legs and no arms and no lungs and then get up and we're going to do another 10 and I've had that type of coach. And listen, there's huge benefits to doing that because you're fit and you're strong. You might have no hips and you might have absolutely no quality. You'll be fit. That's one thing for sure. But then I've had some really good coaches that understood what I needed as well. And the older I've got, the more I've appreciated the type of coach that doesn't have a blanket approach to goalkeeping coaching, and isn't a one size fits all. This worked for me when I played, so this is going to work for you, and this is going to help you. And
Nice.
actually, I've been really lucky that in the past few years, with Richard Hartis now and Andy Quay, who I couldn't speak highly enough of, I've had coaches that they listen and they understand. They understand that I'm different to David, and David's different to Sergio, and me and Jack Butland were two very different goalkeepers. But Andy understood how to get the best out of us both, and what I may need, and how that may differ from what Jack may need on a particular day. And for me, the coaches that I've enjoyed working with the most are the coaches that took the time to really delve into that understanding and find out what it was that made me tick. So, is Lee a guy that we need to get going, or is Lee a guy we need to perhaps get the reins on? And the ones that took the time to understand that and work out, actually, there's times where I might need to slow Lee down, whether that be physically or whether that be mentally. And how can I help him with his quality in this scenario, and think about that. And, those are the coaches that I enjoyed working with, because I appreciate that, just that hard work and that that ability to see me and see what it is that's going to help me. And I can't, I've got to be honest, not all coaches I've had the ability to do that. As I say, there were coaches that were just, this worked for that goalkeeper I trained and I coached 10 years ago, and he did great, and he was man of the match in that one game. And so that's going to be great for you. Oh, yeah. Maybe not. Maybe I'm built totally different to that guy. Maybe mentally I'm not the same. Maybe I have different qualities. Maybe I'm quicker and he's slower, or maybe he's quicker than me, and all these different things. But as I say, as a whole, I've been absolutely blessed and really lucky to work with some really top coaches.
Yeah. Well, I think how you just reflected then and kind of articulated it probably just covered about 4 or 5 questions I had written down and was going to ask you. No, that honestly, that's an amazing insight what you've just given there. And I'll just ask you one more that I probably want you just to elaborate on a little bit. So, kind of, we got together at Man United in February with a group of coaches, about 30 of us, and kudos to you. Coming and joining the day with a group of coaches, even though you're still playing. I know you're injured at the time, but would have been easy for you to slip home, get home early. And, you invested kind of like 5 or 6 hours in yourself to come and spend time with the coaches. And I just want to bring up one point you said on that day, Lee, and just ask if you can explain it a little bit more. So you said that day, we were having some discussions on putting on, or practice design and putting on practices that replicated the demands of the game. So like with lots of decisions that were quite complex things going on, mentally stressful stuff, picking up cues and triggers. Yeah. If you don't mind me saying, you said at the time, I wouldn't have been able to cope with this as a 24-year-old. Whereas now, it's kind of like part and parcel that you deal with that really well. Can you just give us a little insight into that a bit more and what you meant?
Well, as I've grown, and as a younger player, all I wanted to do was work as hard as I could, as fast as I could, for as long as I could in training. So that meant, and this might ring a bell for lots of goalkeepers, that this meant for me, if we were doing volleys, I needed 20 or 30 volleys till the point where the coach is thinking, any chance, Lee? My quad's hanging off. And I'm like, my warm up for a game was an hour and 10 minutes of just smash. And I needed to keep going until everything felt good. And I needed 20 of these, and I needed 10 of these pickups, and I needed 5 to that side and 5 to that side. And then we're on the angle, and I need 10 there, and I need 10 on the other angle. And if 10 and the 10th one's not right, then it's 12. And if the 12th one's not right, then it might have to be 14 or 16. And that's kind of what I was like. And actually, there was, when I think about some of the work that I used to do, and some of the work, 'cause I used to enjoy that. And that was what I felt like I needed. And that's what, in my mind, you know, I had to tick that box. So I've done that, and that's great. And actually, it wasn't necessary. Some of that was unnecessary. And when I think back to how much decision making was happening in those moments, how much was I testing myself for real life situations in those 10 shots that were predictable from the angle, where I knew where they were going, and how much was I really testing myself and making myself better as a goalkeeper for the situations that we face on a Saturday, which are unexpected, unusual. They're rare, and you rarely see the same thing or the same type of thing happen. And was I really preparing for myself for those situations? And the answer probably is no. What I was probably doing was actually more based around an emotion and how I felt about the ball and how it felt to me in that moment, and how, you know, oh, yeah, lovely, that feels great. And what I've realized now, and what I realized later on in my career, was actually doing things slightly differently, perhaps slower, with more quality, or with more thought, and using different things, like using my vision in training, which was something I didn't really discover until I was sort of 30-ish, late 20s. And it's like, oh wow, you know, looking a different way, having different type of focus. Oh, it never even occurred to me that you could look different ways. What do you mean look different? Well, you can look hard at something, you can look softly at something, you can have a wide lens, and using all these different lenses, and actually you can start to train these things. Wow, you can train these things as well. You can actually get better at how you see things. And once it had occurred to me, and once I'd had almost like I'd been enlightened, and that was through just maturing as a person, but also through good coaching and having people like Andy Quye, Richard Hartis, Eric Steele, having these people to work with, Billy Mercer, I can't forget Bill, having these people that, you know, open your eyes to these things. Actually, yeah, wow, that's something that's going to benefit me. And yeah, doing all of these things, I feel like has had a massive impact on how I've been able to improve steadily as I've got older.
Wow. So just to end this section then, again, amazing answer. Give us coaches then couple of pointers. What advice would you give us?
Oh God, that's a tough one, because now I'm preaching to, you know, people that probably know more than me. As I say, for me, the relationship, huge. Understanding your goalkeeper, huge. Those things are really key to being able to set a foundation going forward. But then it's almost like being flexible. So studying how the game is moving, studying the trends, seeing what's happening, not being set in a particular way of doing things, because the game is moving quickly, and the game does, you know, there are trends, there are things happening in the game now that weren't happening 5 years ago, let alone 10, 15 years ago. So it's being able to adapt to those things, and just coaching your goalkeepers to be ready. So that doesn't mean, you know, making things predictable and doing things that they may like. That's putting them in uncomfortable situations. And I didn't, as a goalkeeper myself, I didn't actually enjoy being in those uncomfortable situations during training. I was like, well, what's this about? Is this for you or is this for me? You know, as a coach, it's like, you know, as a player, I want to feel comfortable. I want to feel great about my training. And actually, it's occurred to me recently that it can't always be like that. You can't always, as a goalkeeper, feel comfortable. You have to be challenged in your work and in your training and in your disciplines, because if you're not being challenged, whether that's mentally or physically, and something as simple. Now, I had this conversation with Richard Hartis and Craig Mawson, our two coaches that mentioned. I had this conversation last week. Something as simple and as tiny as serving at the wrong time. as a coach. Now, I said this came up in conversation because I was serving at the time, and I did that thing where you hit one early, and you go, "Oh, I'm sorry, my bad," and apologies. Well, why? What's wrong with hitting one out of rhythm and putting your goal, and he can't get his feet set and all of these things? And we actually ended up opening up a conversation between the three of us, and it ended up, spiraling into me and Rich having another conversation about it later on in the day, of just around that whole topic of, let's not make things comfortable for our goalkeepers. And what's wrong with upsetting his rhythm? And, so what, it's the day before a game, or so what, he wants to feel good today because he trained poorly yesterday. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna make him feel uncomfortable again today. But so it's just bearing all those things in mind. You can talk about it forever, of course, but I find it really, really interesting. And for me, it's relationship, that person having that understanding of your goalkeeper, and then challenging them. They're the three big things. Challenging.
Brilliant. No, that's brilliant. And it's funny you should give that example, Granty, because when the lockdown restrictions lifted, there's a field at the top of my road here where I live, and a friend of mine who's a goalkeeping coach for a grassroots or grassroots level. He does some semi-pro and a couple of pro keepers. He's been starting up his sessions. His name's Chris Kiernan. And I've been going along, just watching, sometimes helping out, getting the balls and stuff. And he's asked for some feedback on his coaching. And we had exactly the same conversation, what you've just said there. Okay. Does every serve need to be on time? Does every serve need to be perfect? Don't apologise when it's not right. And we were coaching a young grassroots goalkeeper, the same thing. So, it's the same topic for everyone. So no, amazing. Honestly, that's been such a good insight. Personally, I've took a lot from this, 100%, and I know so many people will. Just to wrap us up, mate, I've got 4 quick questions that you're only allowed, kind of like really quick fire answers to. That's all right. So don't think about it too much. So, favorite training session?
Goalie wars.
Superstitions?
Scrambled egg and beans followed by jam on toast as pre-match. It's not really a superstition. It's just something I always do.
Routine. Favorite goalkeeper of all time?
Oh, that is so difficult. David James, Peter Schmeichel. I think one of those two.
Okay. And biggest influence in football?
In football, biggest influence. That is a tough one. I'm going to have to think a little bit. It's kind of a 3-way split between Eddie Niedzwiecki, Eric Steele, and Andy Kwai. Those 3 have had a huge impact on me in my career and have influenced a lot of the way I think, the way I want to coach. And all 3 of them have had a huge kind of say on where I've got to at some varying point in my career. So yeah, those 3.
Yeah, nice. Well, just listening to how you just spoke, I think whenever you do decide to stop playing and focus on coaching, I think you've got to be an outstanding coach with where your thinking's at and some of your ideas. So, but no, thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing with everyone your journey. There'll be people listening to this, young goalkeepers, some retired goalkeepers, parents, all kinds of goalkeepers will be listening. So thank you so much. There'll be loads to take, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Top man, Tim. Really, really proud that you've asked me to come on, mate, especially with the lineup that's gone before me. So thanks very much, mate.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Granty. See you soon.
Top man, pal.